we, the jury, find as follows. As to count 1, we find the defendant guilty of aggravated child abuse as charged in the information. As to count 2, we find the defendant guilty of false imprisonment as charged in the information. As to count 3, we find the defendant guilty of neglect of a child as charged in the information.
And thanks for coming back to Law and Crime. As you just saw there, that's the guilty verdict handed down yesterday in the imprisoned son trial out of Palm Beach County. The Florida dad found guilty of aggravated child abuse, child neglect, and false imprisonment. After just about 2.5 hours, the jury deliberated. Timothy Ferriter and his wife Tracy accused of locking their teenage son in a box 8 by 8, built it in the garage. He was in there up to 18 hours a day. There was a bucket that he had to use for relieving himself. Tracy is going to be tried at a later date. Of course, this doesn't bode well for her. I would not be surprised to see some more negotiations underway there. I want to bring in my legal panel now to talk about this verdict. Matthew Mangino is here, Catherine Lizardo. Matty, the plea deal we heard about before trial was the 24 months, which was rejected. Now staring at, as I calculate things, including the added child neglect charge, which came in very late, it could be up to 40 years. Now that's a good headline, highly unlikely, but is there some regret going on behalf of Mr. Ferriter at this point?
Well, I'm sure that, as he reflects on the fact that he's been found guilty and that he does face a substantial sentence, as you just pointed out, I'm sure he's giving second thought to that 24-month sentence that was offered to him. But the other side of the coin is, does he believe that he's not guilty of the charges that were filed against him? And so, as a result of that, he stood by the idea that he was not guilty and that he was willing to roll the dice, so to speak, because he felt strongly about that. So. I'm sure when he's finally sentenced and the length of his sentence greatly overshadowed what he was offered, he may give some pause to that. But did he genuinely believe that he was not guilty of these offenses?
Or did he think maybe the jury could be convinced that he did nothing wrong, which is very different than thinking you did nothing wrong yourself? Well, this issue came up. Priya Murad was the defense attorney involved. She was asked the same question about this plea deal, and things are a little muddier than we thought. This happened after the verdict yesterday. She said the plea deal was contingent on the wife, Tracy, getting a deal. Listen to this.
I think that the decision that we made was that it was not a plea deal that it's not a plea deal that he wanted to take. He wanted everybody to know the truth about what happened. Additionally, the plea deal was made contingent on Tracy taking a plea deal, and we never got a plea deal for Tracy. So it was a bit of a misnomer to say that that was necessarily the plea deal that was offered, as it was contingent on something we didn't know.
So, Catherine Lizardo, this makes it look like he really never had a choice. That it was, if this contingency, a deal offered to Tracy, never occurred, then he never really had a deal either.
He always has a choice. We always have a choice, and he was given that choice. He wanted a plea deal for Tracy, his wife, as well, because I suspect that his plea deal meant that he would have to testify against her, and the reason that the prosecutors didn't even offer a plea deal against her, the wife, is probably because they're going to really come hard against her as to this false imprisonment. And with this verdict against the father, then now her case will as you mentioned, will now involve a few more negotiations from the defense side.
Yeah, Maddie, they added this final child neglect charge, almost as if to say, well, we want to get him on something. Is there going to be a merger of some sort when the aggravated child abuse is far greater in terms of the penalty, up to 30 years, only 5 for the child neglect? Is there a merger there?
There's potentially, lesser included offenses. So when it comes time for sentencing, although you've been convicted of a series of charges, those charges may merge for sentencing purposes, which means the judge is not going to be able to say, okay, well, I'm going to sentence you to,
So, I mean, that's key in this case, and we're going to find that out when the sentence comes out and the secondary trial. Hey, I've got to thank and excuse both Matthew Mangino and Catherine Lizardo. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time right here on Law and Crime. Taking a break. We'll be right back.